Lascaux Tusche Water Soluble is a viscous tuche which can be painted in a smooth, even layer and can be scratched away to create delicate non-printing lines. It can also be used for a broad range of painted marks, offsetting and pattern making. The diluted tuche dries to create characterful granular washes. Dry marks can be re-wet and altered if required, and you can use a china or a glass bowl as a palette. Brushes, paint shapers, rags and sponges can be used to make marks. Different papers can be used to lift off the tuche, and it can be used directly from the bottle or diluted. The painted areas will ultimately print. Smooth PVC sheet and a watercolour wash brush are required for these techniques. One method is to draw into a flat painted layer of Lascaux Tusche water soluble while it's still wet. Just to make clear, for the tuche to make an effective positive, the tuche has to stop light reaching the screen during its lightbox exposure. Even when it's diluted to a certain extent, the water-soluble tuche will resist light. You can't make a lighter tone print by thinning the tuche. Sharpened old paintbrush handles make excellent tools for working into this dry tuche. The marks I'm making will be negative marks in a field of colour. Wire brushes and metal scourers are also effective mark makers. I keep a little tray of postage stamp sized abrasives handy in my studio. Working into wet tuche gives an entirely different set of marks. The viscosity of the diluted tuche will affect the character of the marks created by pushing the tuche around. As you can see, not all tools make suitable marks. Experiment is recommended. The flat textures that rollers produce is quite different from a brushed field of tuche. Try experimenting with different roller types and using the roller to take off the tuche as well as putting it on. This is a technique that I tried out when I first bought the tuches. Different crumpled papers will produce different textures. I've used this technique to make stylized broken cloud patterns. The halftones print well. Notice in the posi-proof comparison how the slight changes in tuche thickness affects light resistance. The tissue paper produces a more dynamic texture than the newspaper, as it rapidly absorbs the moisture from the touche and expands, creating wrinkles. Again, it's worth trying out different papers and brushwork on sample sheets. I keep a collection of my experiments in a big sketchbook for future reference. The video shows some interesting changes occurring as the liquids cause the touche to disperse. However, the composition of the touche does not produce reticulation because the pigment is too fine-grained to achieve that. Similarly, this touche would not be effective with the lift solution. It's particularly noticeable that when you work with this touche, for example here we have some dry brushing going on, it gives you some very distinct and characterful marks. Here, this one where I've been using tissue to create some soft stipple marks, and here scratching through the dry touche gives a very precise quality and sharpness to the textures. I'm quite interested in the textures made by lifting areas of wet touche with different types of paper, gently brushing it down and then carefully peeling it off. On the whole, I think this has been quite a successful series of experiments, and I've used the same exposure time that I use with the touche wash. This, I think, is the most versatile of the touches. Thinned with water or diluting liquid, you have a wash that responds well to the introduction of tannin, window cleaner or washing liquid, and doesn't take too long to dry. It takes a mark, wet or dry, making sure that the wet coating is that much thicker to take advantage of the touche's viscosity. But beware, the surface is more fragile than some of the other touches, so your drying and storing of your positives after work should take account of that. I didn't try out the splatter effects with this touche, but I'm sure it will work with water-soluble touche. And if you are only going to buy one touche, perhaps this is the one, for its versatility and ease of working.